Hello and welcome to another episode of Life and Whiskey. As always, I'm Jordan, and today the whiskey we are going to review is maybe an often reviewed but still a good one, is Eagle Rare. Okay, this product is made by Buffalo Trace. It has the same mash bill as Buffalo Trace, and it used to be a single barrel product. So they used to bottle it by hand, and they'd take each individual barrel, bottle it by hand. That way they could guarantee that it was a single barrel. When production ramped up, they moved it into the bottling line. And so now, although they're still barreling or bottling barrels, there's a chance that the barrels mix. So they had to remove the single barrel label, but there is a chance that you can get a single barrel in a bottle. Good thing is, great, you can get some really awesome flavors. They're trying to match barrel to barrel so that they keep a consistent flavor. However, if you get an extremely amazing bottle, you might not ever be able to find it again. If you get a poor bottle, well, maybe you didn't get what you were expecting. It is 10 years that it is aged. The age statement is on the back of the bottle, right there. And it is a 90 proof or 45% ABV whiskey, alcohol by volume. So it has the same mash bill as the Buffalo Trace. So it's a mash bill, Buffalo Trace mash bill number 1. So you might find some of the same characteristics in this that you would in Buffalo Trace. Let's see here. So for me, here in Wyoming, I was able to find this bottle of now I got myself saying it, of Eagle Rare for $22.79. You should be able to find it for under $30. Some places maybe 35. Like most Buffalo Trace products, they're getting harder and harder to find. Prices seem to be going up on them. Everybody's kind of raving about them. So again, as always, put in the comments below what you can find a bottle of Eagle Rare in your area. So please list your area and the price that you can find it for. So straight off on this one, to me, Eagle Rare has a very light, fruity smell to it. I can get some apple in there, the light orchard fruits. It's very floral, uh, slightly perfumey in there. The sweet comes forward with a little bit of caramel and almost a toffee smell. Yeah, a little bit of oak. Not much though. It's a very light nose. So it's a very quintessential bourbon. I actually find this is the first time I found it, but a slight cherry note in there. But it's kind of a thin flavored bourbon to me. It's not extremely complex. A lot of reviewers have said otherwise, but to me, this kind of goes in, goes out. There's a peppery oak spice finish that kind of lingers, but the main body of it just kind of goes right through. And so it's not a very substantial bourbon, in my opinion. Other people have had different experiences, but to me, it's kind of thin, a little bit of vanilla and sweet up front, kind of has a buttery mouthfeel, ever so briefly, a little corn dust, and then goes into oak, and then that oak it's an oak spice kind of leading into the finish, which also has some black pepper spice. That's underlain by just the slightest sweet. I can't really pick out any distinct flavors on that finish, but yeah, it's just a light sweet oak, and it's very short. Like the whole flavor profile is very short, and that black pepper is a little bit dominant on the finish there. Um, but it's a bit thin. It's a good sipper. A lot of people call it a very quintessential bourbon, like right down the middle. It is a good bourbon, and it might be a good introductory bourbon. I'd say it definitely has a lot of the same flavor characteristics as the Buffalo Trace. Now, me personally, I like the Buffalo Trace profile a little bit better than the Eagle Rare. But you know what? To each his own. So, that's the whiskey we're reviewing today is the Eagle Rare 10-year. And now, the part of life that I want to talk about here is I'm going to do a little bit I'm not going to be doing any reading, but I'm going to tell you about some reading that I've done. These three books, I think they're excellent books. And I'll explain why and kind of the premise or the category that they fit into and why I like them. So the first one is Asane County Almanac by Aldo Leopold. The second one is The Big Burn by Timothy Egan. And the last one is A Quiet Place of Violence, Hunting and Ethics in the Missouri River Breaks by Alan Morris Jones. Okay. For starters, the Big Burn and the Asane County Almanac, you can get both. You can find both of these easily in audiobook form, and also there's versions of them on YouTube, as well as the Big Burn PBS and let's see, the American Experience series. They did like an hour-long video based on the Big Burn. Or influenced by it anyways. It is basically what these books have in common. This is kind of coattailing on the How to Hunt Elk series. This is kind of conservation-minded, hunting and ethics-minded reading. They're really, really good reads, though. They're easy to read. They're not difficult. They're not very long. Like, even though this book is, that thick, I read through this in, I think, a week. And it's really hard to put down. It's really, really interesting. So I'm going to start with this. So the Big Burn is about a giant forest fire that raged across Montana, Washington, Idaho in 1910. And politics is really the driving underlying principle of this book. Along with conservation, and it's a very interesting read in the fact that it's historically accurate. Personally, I have a lot of experience on the Idaho and Montana border, right where this took place. So if you're going down Interstate 9094, headed from Montana into Idaho, the first city you kind of come into on the Idaho side is Wallace, Idaho. They got a great brewery there. Check them out if you ever get a chance. And on the Montana side of Lookout Pass, there's signs for, but the cities no longer exist. Taft, DeBorgia, I forget some of the other names of the towns that used to be there. But it's a really, really interesting area. I used to deer hunt and elk hunt kind of right there. And this book outlines how the Forest Service was started, how the National Forest system was created with Roosevelt, details a lot of that stuff, and then how politics and policies and money allocation in the Congress directly impacted people's lives and how and why people were able or not able to react to the fires. And the reason why I bring this up is because it is the same exact families that are controlling policy today that were controlling policy back then. It's the same exact arguments from back then that we're having today about public lands and all the other arguments that go with it, and fire suppression and all this other stuff. And so it is an amazing background on how we got to where we are today. And it should be a little bit infuriating to you if you're a lover of public lands and the national forest system, that it's the same battles over and over and over, and the same people creating the policies that seem to be undermining public opinion over and over and over. So I highly recommend this. Check it out. Maybe if you just want to check out like a little clip on on YouTube from the PBS special. You'll really like it. Some of the characters that show up in this book are Pulaski. So if you've ever worked on a fire crew, you'll know that the hand tool you use is often called, or often the hand tool you use is a Pulaski. That is named after this guy. You get Roosevelt shows up in here. William Taft shows up in here. Several senators from Montana. Pinchot shows up in here, and the starting of the Forest Service. A lot of names that you've probably heard throughout history. This book, The Big Burn, does a great job bringing them to light, showing you what role they played in history, and it's just a fascinating read. So even if you take the politics out of it and you just want an entertaining read, this book, I highly recommend it. The Big Burn by Timothy Egan. Go get yourself a copy or an audio book and listen to it, read it, whatever. But I think you'll really enjoy that one. And the reason why we went with Eagle Rare today is, for its easy sippability. I think it would go really good. Pour yourself, a little bit of whiskey, sit down, crack open a book, start reading on a gloomy, spring morning or whatever, or evening, sit by the fire. That kind of premise. Sitting in your smoking chair with a cigar in your library or any of that kind of stuff. Eagle Rare is kind of a good whiskey for that type of place setting. So go ahead and check it out. The next book, I'm sure everybody's heard of. Many people have to read it in school. It's a Sand County Almanac by Aldo Leopold. Now this, it's really about a conservation ethic, and it's one of those, so Aldo Leopold was intrinsic in the beginning movements of the modern conservation movement. Sand County takes place. The book takes place at Leopold's cabin in Wisconsin, in central Wisconsin. So it's not actually a county in Wisconsin, but the sand counties of Wisconsin are kind of that central region. So northern Juneau County, Adams County, Wood County. What are some of the other ones around there? I grew up in that area. So it's right on the edge of the Driftless area. The Wisconsin River runs through the middle of it. And a lot of the sand of the sand counties are remnants from the glacial period coming in, and it's glacial Lake Wisconsin that created the sands that are there. And it's where it's a lot of cranberry growers in Wisconsin, a lot of potato growers in Wisconsin. They're in that area. And so, this book, number one, just geographically holds a place in my heart because I grew up in that area. Spent a lot of time hunting and fishing in those areas and exploring the terrain there. But also the principles that are in here, kind of the ideas of giving back, saving for the future, showing the next generation what's there and why, just using our resources wisely, and kind of how, as a society, we've deteriorated some of those resources, and the next generation won't necessarily get to experience them. So just a good book to get your mind going, get your mind thinking in a conservation aligned position, and maybe it might bring to light some of the reasons why you might want to think about the next generation coming up rather than solely yourself. So Sand County Almanac, another easy read, but a really good book. And finally, this one takes a little sidestep from the other two, but A Quiet Place of Violence, Hunting, and Ethics in the Missouri River Breaks. Ellen Morris Jones. It's a really thin book. It's not a very long read at all. You could probably read it in an evening. But it's a really interesting look at how, many hunters, myself included, kind of deal with the idea of taking a life, respecting animals, respecting the landscape, kind of that emotional journey you go through when doing that, as well as some of the reverence that goes with that process and becoming part of the food chain, becoming, taking part in hunting and getting your own food and the natural environment that's around us. Um, the imagery, if you've never checked out the Missouri River breaks in person, I highly encourage you to check out some photos of it. Personally, I've spent some time antelope hunting over there when I used to live in Montana. I also, on the CMR, Charles M. Russell Wildlife Refuge, part of the refuge system, I've had to pick up equipment from there before when I was working for Fish and Wildlife Service. So I got to drive through a part of the refuge. It's a huge refuge. I highly encourage you to go spend some time out there. Amazing stuff. Some of the best elk hunting zones in Montana are in the breaks. It's one of those places where it takes a long time to get a tag, and they're pretty difficult to get if you're going for a bull. But it's just a really, really cool landscape. A lot of history. Lewis and Clark, they traveled down the Missouri River. They went through that area. But it's one of those things that, maybe you don't, maybe you're a hard and fast killer and you don't ever think about that stuff. But I get the feeling that almost everybody who participates in hunting at one time or another sits back and reflects upon the taking of a life and, what that means and what it means to be a hunter. And hunting as a conservation tool comes in there along with the ethics that you bring as a hunter. So again, not trying to preach to anybody, but something you might want to check out. Easy read and very enjoyable, and the author does a very good job of presenting imagery through their words in this book. So please check that one out. So if any of those things sound interesting to you, I highly encourage you to go pick up one of those 3 books, if not all 3 of them. They're just good, easy reading books. They do a lot to present conservation in good light and also round out the different elements and variables and people and actors that are involved in conservation or have been throughout history, or how we got from the westward expansion of America to where we're at now with conservation and public lands and other ideologies that we currently hold. And so, yeah, that's probably all I want to say about that. Just go out, check it out. If nothing else, check out the audiobook part of it, or maybe just some video clips on YouTube, see if it's something that interests you. Also, if you get a chance, check out the Eagle Rare. It's a really good Kentucky Street Bourbon, 10 years on oak. And let's see, that's probably all I want to say about that. Again, comments below, please list what you can find this bottle for in your area. Also, if you have any recommendations for conservation-minded books or hunting and ethics-minded books, please throw those in the comments below. Also, please don't forget to, if you find this content interesting, like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that on YouTube, but still trying to grow this channel. Things have been going kind of slow so far, but hopefully I can get it to take off here pretty soon. So if you have any ideas about content or anything you'd like to see, please also include that in any comments that you might have. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And go out and try yourself some Eagle Rare. Have a good one. Bye.